All right, welcome to this fifth class using Brother Tio's class notes. Actually, we had some problems during our class with the Zoom call, and so I am recording this at home using the same slides that were used during the class. So this is similar, but not exactly the same as what was covered during the class. I remember back at class number 3 at the end, the feedback from the people in the room was, oh, we like those analogies. And so based on that, I added analogies to class 4. And one of the analogies that I added was of a crew on a sailing boat. And I referenced the Eightfold Noble Path, what crew member or what factors corresponded to each of the 8 Noble Path factors. And then at the end of the class, the last class, there was a question about, so which Cetasika corresponds to each of these path factors? Trying to piece that together. And I thought to myself, okay, the class who has been exposed to Abhidhamma for some time wants me to relate this back to the Cetasikas defined in the Abhidhamma. So I decided to add that to the beginning of today's class. Actually, the Abhidhamma Sangaha identifies the main Cetasika involved in each of the path factors. However, Cetasikas do not work in isolation. I've tried to identify the principal supporting Cetasikas for each of the main Cetasikas involved in each of the path factors. Now, of course, other Cetasikas will also be involved with each path factor. Now, this was an interesting exercise. Reminds me of something that happened more than 10 years ago. I was teaching the Abhidhamma class, and I was asked, hey, which Cetasika is involved in noting? I thought to myself, that's not explicitly mentioned in any of the texts. And I spent years researching this question, talking to monks, looking at texts, and analyzing through my own experience to see which Cetasikas were actually involved in noting. After a lot of analysis and discussion, I identified 9. Now, you may disagree, but these are the 9 that I came up with. The first one was energy, then mindfulness, then concentration or one-pointedness Cetasika, panya or wisdom, understanding without thinking or analysis, then cetana, volition. The next one that I came up with was attention, manasikara. Initial application, placing the mind on the object, sustained application, keeping the mind on the object, and finally, perception. So all of these 9 together come together to create noting, the activity of noting. So even though the Abhidhamma Sangaha mentions the main Cetasika involved in each of the path factors, I explored and thought, okay, what are some of the additional Cetasikas involved in each of the path factors as supporting Cetasikas? Let's start with right view. This is the Panya Cetasika. Panya provides the understanding of the 4 noble truths and the nature of reality by seeing things as they truly are. Now, I want to emphasize here that Panya involves understanding without thinking, without analysis. This is knowing in your gut, knowing in your heart, not by reflecting or thinking or analyzing. It's simply part of you. Panya in meditation arises based on continuous mindfulness, sati, and momentary concentration, khanika samadhi, which is one-pointedness, ekagata. This aspect of developing panya we will discuss more and more as we go into vipassana meditation. But another important supporting factor for right view is faith or confidence, saddha, which gives trust in the truth of the Dhamma. The next path factor, right intention. This is the initial application, vitakka cetasika, when directed toward renunciation, non-ill will, and non-harming. Now, vitakka is traditionally in Abhidhamma thought of as placing the mind on something, but in the suttas, vitakka has a little bit broader understanding or a broader definition of thinking. So when one applies one's thinking or puts one's mind onto renunciation, non-ill will, or non-harming, this is the path factor of right intention. It is volition or cetana which drives the intention. Renunciation is a form of non-greed or alobha. Non-ill will or metta is a form of non-hatred, adosa. And non-harming is compassion, karuna. Energy, virya, drives the effort to maintain wholesome intentions. We're now moving into the morality factors, right speech, right action, and right livelihood. They're quite similar, so I'll group them together. Right speech, this is the abstinence from wrong speech cetasika. There's actually a dedicated cetasika. When there's an opportunity for wrong speech, this cetasika kicks in and blocks the wrong speech from happening. So that's the virati, or abstinence from wrong speech cetasika. But supporting the abstinence from wrong speech cetasika are conscience, hiri, and fear of wrongdoing, ottappa. So for any of the sila or morality-based path factors, the idea of conscience, knowing what's right in your heart, and fear of wrongdoing, this is reflecting on the impact of kama, is going to hold one back from doing wrong speech, wrong action, or wrong livelihood. But mindfulness, or sati, ensures awareness before speaking, before acting, and as part of one's livelihood. Loving kindness, metta or adosa, also supports wholesome speech. Right action, very similar to right speech. It is the abstinence from wrong action, cetasika. Conscience or hiri, fear of wrongdoing, or ottappa, are supporting. Mindfulness and loving kindness also support. Right livelihood, this is the abstinence from wrong livelihood, cetasika. Supporting this, again, conscience, hiri, fear of wrongdoing, ottappa. Mindfulness and loving kindness support wholesome livelihood. Right effort, this is the energy, virya cetasika. Mindfulness, sati, supports right effort by recognizing unwholesome and wholesome states. So right effort, if you remember, involves being aware of unwholesome and stopping them from arising, being aware of unwholesome and getting rid of existing unwholesome, being aware of wholesome and encouraging new ones to arise, new wholesome to arise, and being aware of wholesome and keeping, nurturing existing wholesome. So the awareness of unwholesome and wholesome is fundamental to right effort. Decision, or adhimokkha cetasika, provides the firm commitment to persisting. Wish to do, or chanda, drives the desire to let go of bad states and achieve good states. Right mindfulness, this is obviously the mindfulness cetasika sati. Continuous mindfulness supports the arising of panya, and in turn, panya in the form of clear comprehension, sampajana, deepens mindfulness. How does that work? Sampajana provides context to the mindfulness, so that with the wisdom of sampajana, mindfulness knows what this is as an ultimate reality, why this is, the conditions and relationships between things, and what are the factors, the characteristics, general characteristics of anicca, dukkha, anatta, of what is being experienced. All of that combines mindfulness with the wisdom of sampajana. Also, energy or virya is needed to make mindfulness continuous. Right concentration. This is obviously the one-pointedness, ekagata cetasika. One-pointedness is reinforced by tranquility or passaddhi, that calmness, serenity. That supports concentration. And focus is sustained by energy or virya. Concentration is also supported by other jhana factors. The other jhana factors are initial application, placing the mind on the object, vitakka, sustained application, keeping the mind on the object, vichara, enthusiasm, piti, and pleasant feeling, sukha. Okay, now let's understand the sequence of the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right view establishes an understanding of the Four Noble Truths. Without this correct perspective, one's practice would lack a clear direction. Without right view, morality or sila would be based on convention rather than insight. Right intention guides the mind toward renunciation, non-harm, and non-ill will. So the two wisdom factors, panya, right view and right intention, these two factors act as a foundation. And this foundation provides insight into why ethical conduct or sila and meditation, bhavana, are necessary. The next three factors, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, the morality factors, support concentration. Once wisdom sets the right direction, the three sila factors, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, become essential to purify bodily and verbal actions. Without sila, the mind remains agitated by remorse and unwholesome actions, preventing deeper concentration. Concentration or samadhi culminates in insight and vipassana. With morality in place, the mind becomes more settled, allowing for effective meditation. The samadhi factors, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, stabilize the mind, allowing it to see reality clearly, reinforcing panya. So, panya leading to sila, leading to samadhi, beginning with wisdom, is an approach focusing on final liberation, because panya directly uproots ignorance and ensures that morality and concentration support final liberation. This sequence aligns with the Theravada perspective, where wisdom is ultimately the leading factor in breaking the cycle of suffering. So the sequence of panya factors, right view and right intention, evolving into the samadhi factors, the sila factors of right speech, right action, right livelihood, evolving into the samadhi factors of right energy, right mindfulness, and right concentration. That sequence is focused on liberation. This is the liberation path. This is the liberation sequence that the Buddha laid out in the Noble Eightfold Path. However, this is not the normal, typical sequence that we read about in the suttas or see in the Visuddhimagga. The sequence that we see normally is sila, then samadhi, and then panya. Beginning with morality, emphasizes a step-by-step cultivation of the path. This is relevant for those beginning the practice and is commonly found in the suttas. The Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, is structured around sila, virtue, about 10% of its content, samadhi, concentration, about 45% of the content, and then panya, understanding without thinking, 45% of the content. Now, where did I get those percentage from? I took the Pali version and counted the number of Pali words. And 10% of the Pali words of the Visuddhimagga were related to the Sila chapters, 45% related to the Samadhi chapters, and 45% to the Panya section. So again, This is the developmental sequence for people who are beginning the practice. Sila restrains gross defilements, the kilesa, by avoiding evil. So we undertake precepts to not kill and not steal and not lie and so on to avoid the gross forms of evil. Samadhi, which is making the mind calm, collected, unified, and composed, settles the mind to the point where the hindrances, the nivarana of sense desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, and skeptical doubt cannot arise. So they are temporarily suppressed while the mind has that level of concentration. And finally, panya permanently uproots the latent tendencies. These are the root causes behind things to purify the mind, and that only happens at stages of sainthood. The Sotapanna, first degree of sainthood, uproots some of the defilement, some of the latent tendencies. The second weakens further. The third uproots even more of the latent tendencies. And then finally, the Arahat uproots all remaining unwholesome latent tendencies. Continuous mindfulness is important at all aspects of the path. During Sila, continuous mindfulness prevents letting one's guard down due to absent-mindedness. In the Samadhi, continuous mindfulness leads to the development of concentration. For Panya, continuous mindfulness, together with momentary concentration, applied to ultimate realities, leads to insight knowledges. In the last class, we compared the Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana understanding of the Four Noble Truths. Now, let us look at the Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana perspective on the Eightfold Noble Path, starting with right view. For Theravada, right view is the foundation of the Noble Eightfold Path and is traditionally divided into two types. Mundane right view, which is understanding the law of karma, moral responsibility, and the benefits of wholesome actions. And supramundane right view, which provides direct insight into the Four Noble Truths leading to the realization of Nibbana. Right view develops through wisdom or panya, leading to detachment and the cessation of suffering. From the Mahayana point of view, right view is deeply influenced by the doctrine of sunyata or emptiness and bodhicitta, awakening mind. Mahayana emphasizes seeing all phenomena as empty of inherent existence or as manifestations of the mind. Right view in Mahayana also includes the realization that we are all interconnected, all beings are interconnected, and true wisdom is inseparable from great compassion. The Vajrayana right view aligns with the Mahayana understanding of emptiness, but is complemented by tantric methods. It emphasizes the union of wisdom and method, seeing all phenomena as empty while skillfully engaging in practices that transform ordinary perceptions. In higher Tantra, right view includes the realization that all appearances are the play of the mind. Through deity yoga, mantra, and energy work, one directly integrates this view into experience. So we see that each tradition maintains the core understanding of wisdom, but expresses it through different frameworks suited to their respective paths to awakening. Moving on to right intention. In Theravada, right intention is the mental resolve that supports wisdom and ethical conduct, traditionally divided into three types: intention of renunciation, intention of non-ill will, and intention of harmlessness. These intentions counteract greed, hatred, and delusion, leading to Nibbana. Mahayana right intention expands to include bodhicitta, the aspiration to attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. It transforms self-centered renunciation into the great renunciation, which seeks liberation not only for oneself, but for all beings. The practice of the 6 paramitas, or the perfections, such as generosity and patience, embodies right intention. Vajrayana right intention includes bodhicitta, but is further refined into the tantric motivation, where practitioners engage in skillful means to swiftly attain enlightenment. This includes transformative practices such as deity yoga, mantra, and visualization to transform ordinary perceptions into wisdom. The practitioner sees the world as a sacred manifestation of the enlightened mind, aligning intention with non-dual awareness. So while all 3 traditions emphasize non-harm and wisdom, Vajrayana integrates esoteric methods to rapidly actualize right intention in the practitioner's direct experience. Moving on to right speech. Theravada right speech is defined as abstaining from false speech, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter. Right speech is cultivated to promote truthfulness, harmony, kindness, and meaningful communication, supporting moral discipline, sila, on the path to nibbana. Mahayana right speech is guided by compassion and wisdom, ensuring that communication benefits others and leads them toward awakening. While adhering to ethical speech, skillful means may allow for adapted speech if it ultimately leads to liberation. Vajrayana right speech incorporates mantra recitation, which is seen as a powerful means of purifying speech and transforming perception. Practitioners engage in Vajra speech, meaning speech that is aligned with enlightened awareness, avoiding ordinary conceptual limitations. Speech is also used in tantric vows and empowerments, where precise verbal expressions play a role in the practitioner's transformation. In all 3 traditions, right speech supports ethical conduct and wisdom, but Vajrayana uniquely integrates it as a tool for direct spiritual transformation through mantra and sacred utterance. Moving on to right action. Theravada right action is part of sila, moral discipline, and involves abstaining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. Practicing right action leads to purity of conduct, supporting concentration, samadhi, and wisdom, panya, ultimately leading to nibbana. Mahayana right action is guided by bodhicitta, ensuring that actions are motivated by compassion and aimed at benefiting all beings. The 6 paramitas, perfections, such as generosity, dana, and ethical discipline, sila, expand the scope of right action beyond mere abstinence to actively engaging in wholesome deeds. Skillful means may sometimes justify unconventional actions if they lead beings towards enlightenment. Vajrayana right action integrates tantric ethics, where all actions are transformed into the path of awakening through wisdom and skillful means. Some advanced Vajrayana practices, such as deity yoga and tantric vows, require practitioners to maintain pure perception, seeing all actions as expressions of enlightened awareness. Ritual actions such as mudras, the sacred hand gestures, and offerings are also considered expressions of right action when performed with the correct view. So in all 3 traditions, right action supports ethical conduct, but Mahayana emphasizes compassionate engagement, while Vajrayana transforms ordinary actions into a means of realizing non-dual wisdom. Okay, moving on to right livelihood. Theravada right livelihood means earning a living in a way that is ethical and does not cause harm. The Buddha specifically prohibited 5 kinds of livelihoods: trading in weapons, trading in living beings, including slavery and human trafficking, trading in meat, such as killing animals for profit, trading in intoxicants, alcohol and drugs, trading in poisons, harmful substances. Lay practitioners should engage in honest ethical work that aligns with sila, moral discipline, while monastics sustain themselves through alms. Mahayana right livelihood is approached with bodhicitta, ensuring that one's work benefits others and aligns with the aspiration to help all beings. Ethical livelihood includes careers that promote compassion, wisdom, and social welfare. Skillful means allows for flexibility as long as the ultimate goal is to aid others along the path to awakening. Vajrayana right livelihood includes ethical livelihood principles, but also incorporates tantric commitments, emphasizing that work should be approached with pure perception and the view of sacred outlook. Some tantric traditions permit unconventional means if they serve the greater goal of enlightenment, but only for highly realized practitioners. Practitioners may also engage in ritual-based livelihoods, such as dharma art, mantra recitation for healing, and making offerings, as long as they are done with pure motivation. So in all three traditions, right livelihood ensures that one's means of living aligns with ethical and spiritual principles, with Mahayana emphasizing compassion and Vajrayana integrating esoteric wisdom. Okay, moving to right effort. Theravada right effort is the persistent cultivation of wholesome states and the abandonment of unwholesome states. It's traditionally divided into four aspects: preventing unwholesome states from arising, overcoming unwholesome states that have already arisen, developing wholesome states that have not yet arisen, maintaining and strengthening wholesome states that have arisen. This effort is crucial in progressing through samatha and vipassana toward nibbana. Mahayana right effort is infused with bodhicitta, meaning the effort is not only for personal liberation, but also for the benefit of all beings. It is applied to the 6 paramitas, especially the virya paramita, the perfection of effort or diligence, which emphasizes perseverance in helping others. It also includes overcoming obstacles, both internal and external, that hinder the path to Buddhahood. Vajrayana right effort is transformed into skillful means and tantric diligence, where effort is directed towards seeing everything as an expression of enlightenment. It involves the generation stage, creating sacred perception through deity yoga, mantra, and visualization, and the completion stage, dissolving dualistic perceptions into non-dual awareness. In some practices, in some advanced practices, effort is directed toward recognizing the already present enlightened nature. So in all three traditions, right effort is essential, but Mahayana broadens it with universal compassion, and Vajrayana refines it into a swift, transformative process through esoteric methods. Okay, moving to right mindfulness. Theravada right mindfulness is primarily practiced through the 4 foundations of mindfulness, satipatthana: mindfulness of the body, kayanupassana; mindfulness of feelings, vedananupassana; mindfulness of the mind, chittanupassana; mindfulness of mental objects, dhammanupassana. It involves observing phenomena with bare attention and without attachment or aversion, leading to deep insight, vipassana, and ultimately nibbana. Mahayana right mindfulness is cultivated with bodhicitta, ensuring awareness benefits all beings. The 4 foundations of mindfulness are expanded with an emphasis on emptiness, sunyata, helping practitioners see that all experiences are impermanent and selfless. Some Mahayana texts emphasize mindfulness as a means to realize the illusory nature of reality. Vajrayana right mindfulness integrates sacred outlook, where everything is seen as pure and inherently enlightened. Mindfulness is cultivated through deity visualization, mantra recitation, and awareness of the subtle energy body. In higher teachings, mindfulness shifts from deliberate observation to effortless awareness of the natural state. So while all 3 traditions emphasize mindfulness as a key to liberation, Theravada focuses on direct observation, Mahayana integrates emptiness and compassion, and Vajrayana transforms perception itself into the path. And finally, right concentration. Theravada right concentration refers to one-pointedness of the mind, ekaggata, primarily developed through jhana, meditative absorption. The 4 rupa jhanas, form absorptions, involve deep states of mental unification. In Theravada vipassana, jhana can be a support, but insight, panya, Not concentration alone leads to Nibbana. Mahayana right concentration is cultivated within the 6 paramitas, particularly the dhyana paramita, reflection on meditation. Samadhi is used to realize emptiness, sunyata, and bodhicitta, ensuring meditation serves the enlightenment of all beings. Concentration specific to Mahayana include sunyata samadhi, absorption into the perception of emptiness, and tathagata samadhi, realization of Buddha nature. Vajrayana right concentration is integrated into deity visualization, mantra recitation, and subtle energy practices. Advanced Vajrayana practices include deity yoga, which is meditative absorption into the form of an enlightenment being, Mahamudra and Donzen, moving beyond effortless concentration into direct recognition of the non-dual awareness, and Tummo, inner heat meditation using concentration to manipulate subtle energies and awaken realization. In all 3 traditions, right concentration is essential for progress, with Theravada emphasizing jhana, Mahayana integrating emptiness and compassion, and Vajrayana using esoteric techniques to transform perception. Okay, going back to Brother Tio's notes. Buddhism explains that suffering, or dukkha, occurred due to impermanence, anicca, unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and non-self, anatta, nature of conditioned phenomena. Anicca can be thought of as like temporary or momentary existence. Dukkha can be thought of as painful or existential suffering. Anatta can be thought of as 5 aggregates or no control. So there are 2 ways of describing anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Temporary, painful, and 5 aggregates represent a conceptual perspective, whereas momentary existence, existential suffering, and no control represent a vipassana way of experiencing anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Sometimes in the suttas, the Buddha used both the conceptual approach and the vipassana approach when describing anicca, dukkha, and anatta. For example, in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the first sutta, the Buddha said birth, aging, illness, and death are suffering. This is a conceptual description of dukkha. In the same sutta, the Buddha said the 5 aggregates subject to clinging are dukkha. This is the vipassana viewpoint on dukkha. In the second sutta, the Anattana-lakkhana Sutta, the Buddha analyzed a being into the 5 aggregates. This is a conceptual view of anatta. In the same sutta, the Buddha said that there is no control over the 5 aggregates. This is the vipassana view on anatta. Many Buddhists talk of the concepts of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. But this is very different from experiencing anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Concepts are the result of thinking and analysis. Experiencing anicca, dukkha, and anatta can only arise through vipassana insights. This is not to say there is no benefit in working with the concepts of anicca, dukkha, anatta. Let's look at the concepts of anicca, dukkha, anatta using a candle analogy. Reflecting on the concepts of anicca, dukkha, and anatta will not lead to insights or nibbana, but it will support spiritual development in daily life. Let's first look at anicca. The flame of the candle never stays the same, even for a moment. It flickers, shifts, and eventually burns out. Just like this flame, everything in life is in a state of constant change. Our bodies, thoughts, emotions, and even the world around us. Nothing remains fixed. Now, reflecting on the concept of anicca, when we grasp less tightly onto things, whether material possessions, relationships, or emotions, we reduce suffering. Knowing that situations and feelings are impermanent helps us to release attachment. Practicing mindfulness allows us to observe the arising and passing away of thoughts, emotions, and sensations. This awareness helps us to respond skillfully to life's challenges. Knowing that moments are fleeting encourages us to savor each experience fully. We appreciate the beauty of impermanence, the changing seasons, a sunset, or a loved one's smile. Witnessing the constantly changing nature of things can cultivate calmness and acceptance instead of clinging and striving. This fosters equanimity in the face of life's ups and downs. Just as when we left our parents, our children will leave us. This is the nature of things. Relationships change. Now let's focus on dukkha, the concept of dukkha. As the candle burns, the wax melts away. No matter how beautiful or bright the candle once was, it cannot resist the heat. Likewise, because everything is impermanent, clinging to anything leads to suffering. We struggle against the natural process of change, trying to hold on to things that inevitably slip away. Recognizing that life won't always meet our expectations helps us to navigate disappointments with equanimity. We learn to accept both joy and sorrow gracefully. Knowing that everyone experiences dukkha, we cultivate compassion for ourselves and others. We recognize shared vulnerability and offer kindness. When somebody gets angry at you, you can see that they are suffering. Rather than chasing perpetual happiness, we find contentment in simplicity. We appreciate small joys without clinging to them desperately. Understanding the inherent unsatisfactoriness in clinging to impermanent things allows us to see the source of our suffering and motivates us to seek a lasting solution beyond external circumstances. That is why you are making the effort to engage with spiritual development, because you recognize that life is suffering and that there is a solution. Okay, let's switch to anatta. If we look closely, what we call a candle is just a combination of wax, flame, and wick. There is no single unchanging candle. Similarly, what we call a self is just a collection of ever-changing physical and mental processes. There is no fixed, permanent I behind the experience, just like there is no unchanging candle apart from the parts that make it up. Reflecting on the concept of anatta, when we realize that there is no fixed I, we become less defensive and more open-minded. We let go of rigid self-views and embrace growth. Recognizing our interconnectedness with all beings, we act with compassion and empathy. We understand that our well-being is linked to the well-being of others. When we don't cling to a fixed self-image, we are less affected by praise or criticism. We find freedom in being fluid and adaptable. Seeing that actions ultimately impact not just a fixed self, but the interconnected web of existence can motivate ethical behavior. In other words, it's not all about me. It encourages us to act with consideration for the well-being of not just ourselves, but also the well-being of others. Now let's switch to the yogi's experience of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. This is from an ultimate realities perspective. What I will share with you is that it is impossible to use words to fully reflect the experience of anicca, dukkha, and anatta during vipassana. This is why yogis use analogies to explain their experiences. They may just say, I felt blah, 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 and the teacher will understand that what that really means. The path to Nibbana involves first gaining insights into ultimate realities, then gaining insights into the three characteristics of ultimate realities, anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Insights are non-conceptual, no thinking or analysis. I'll give you an example. I pick a leaf from a tree. When I look at it with my bare eyes, I describe the shape, the size, the color of the leaf. However, when I take that leaf and put it under a powerful microscope, it's the same leaf, but my perspective changes. Depending on the power of the microscope, I may see parts of the leaf. I may see individual cells on the leaf, or even go down to the atoms that make up those cells. Same leaf, dramatically different perspective and understanding of the same object as one's concentration and focus becomes more precise. So too with Vipassana meditation. Even the most experienced yogi starts with concepts at the beginning of their retreat. Soon, typically 2 or 3 days, depending on the experience of the yogi, those concepts are kind of cleaned away, and the yogi will experience ultimate realities. In other words, instead of a pain in my leg, there is simply the experience of pushing, pulling, heat, tension, hardness. These are the raw experiences of the yogi at the ultimate reality level. The wind element, the heat element, and the earth element. This is what is directly experienced. And as the concentration becomes stronger, what becomes apparent is within each element, there is that characteristic. Each of these elements, each of these experiences has the characteristic of anicca, dukkha, anatta. The nature of the experience, hardness, temperature, pressure, becomes secondary, and what becomes primary is the experience of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. So let's start with anicca. The characteristic of anicca is, having arisen, it disappears. A yogi might describe this experience as continuous, complete disappearance or dissolution. Sometimes it's described like unending bubbles popping, like flashes of lightning, or the daily pages of a wall calendar being constantly torn off. For dukkha, the yogi's mind also tries to reject the experience of an impermanent, fickle, insecure reality underlying all of our conventional worldview. They resist it. There is a resistance to it. Because it is constantly disappearing, the ultimate reality is unsatisfactory or oppressing. It's like having a rug pulled out from underneath you, having nothing to support you. It is this emptiness. The experience of dukkha might be described as dying many times each moment, or being continuously shot by a machine gun. You notice how the dukkha arises because of the first experience of anicca. And finally, anatta. Focusing on anicca reveals that there is no permanent essence within the experience. So starting with anicca, nothing permanent within the experience. When the experience is seen as being in constant flux, constantly changing, there is an understanding that there is nothing, no permanent self behind the experience. When I say understanding, this is not thinking, not analysis. This is from your heart. There is the direct experience from anicca that there is no permanent core, no self. Another way of understanding anatta is by focusing on dukkha. When you focus on dukkha, you reveal that there is no control over the experience. The yogi has no choice but to watch helplessly as the oppressive nature of the object is continuously experienced. They have no choice but just to watch, falling away, falling away, falling away. They can't change it. This is a very deep-rooted experience, related to existence type of experience. Okay, those were the slides that we covered during our class, and we will continue with our next class.